Welcome to episode 70 of our ComfyUI tutorial series. We can finally use Loras with the Nunchaku Qwen model, and today I want to show you 8 different Loras that are quite useful for editing images. The first Lora lets you change the camera angle. Then I'll show you how you can relight products and subjects. We'll continue with a useful transformation that turns a white background into an actual scene. Another Lora called Fusion lets you blend 2 images together so they look like they belong in the same place. There's also one that removes all kinds of shadows from your subjects, and a new Lora for removing elements from an image while keeping the color and position more consistent. At the end, there's a Lora that lets you place designs on T-shirts, and the last one is a cool Lora that replaces the white color with something that fits the scene. You can learn more about the Qwen model in episode 64, and the workflows are free on Discord. Here in this note, you have all the info you need to run it. If you don't have the Nunchaku node, you can install it quickly by using the portable ComfyUI, then run the Nunchaku bat file from the add-ons folder. If you see a red line around the nodes, that means Nunchaku is not working. Besides the RG3 and Nunchaku nodes, today I'm using a new one that lets us load Lora for the Nunchaku version of Qwen. To get that node, go to Manager, then Custom Nodes Manager, search for Qwen image, and install the node I'm showing here. You'll see an install button, but mine is already installed. After installation, refresh, and it should show up like this node here, without any red line around it. Once you have all the nodes working, you need the models. If you watched episode 64, you should already have most of them. If not, let me explain it quickly. It depends on your video card. If you have a 40 series, you need to use the Int4 models, and if you have a 50 series, you need to use the FP4 version of the models. You can find all versions of the models at the link I show here. At the top, you'll see the ones for the 50 series. I recommend getting that one. For other video cards like mine or smaller, get the INT4 models. I'm using this one, and I've included a direct link for it here in the note. Just click the link, go to the ComfyUI folder, find the Models folder, and you'll see folders for different types of models. In this case, it's a diffusion model, so place it there. Then do the same for the Clip model and place it in the Clip folder, and for the VAE model, put it in the VAE folder. Depending on the model you select, make sure each one is properly chosen in its node, especially if it's different from the ones I recommend. If you have the same models as me, they should already be selected. Next, we have the Lora loader, where we add the Loras we'll test today. It's the node we installed to let us use the Qwen Loras. The Nunchaku team mentioned they're still working on the official release for it, so until then, we can use this custom node. For each of the 8 workflows presented today, I've included one Lora here. The rest of the models stay the same. Only the Lora and trigger words change in each workflow, except for a few that have extra load image nodes. Please read more about each Lora using the link I included to see who the author is and what they recommend. They might also release new, improved updates. Download the Lora and rename it as I suggest if you want it to be selected automatically. If it has a different name, you'll need to reselect it in the node. Click here, and you'll see it usually has a random name that's hard to remember, so I suggest renaming it and placing it in the Loras folder. If a model doesn't appear in the node when you try to load it, press the R key to refresh the node definition. Now we should be ready to go and test the first workflow. We have this load image node where we can choose the image we want to edit, so I'll select this chair for this example. Then the image is scaled down, so Qwen works better with it. If it's too big, it can behave strangely and won't keep things consistent as it should. After resizing, it goes to image 1, and for these workflows, it works best with 1 image, although there are other options where you can add up to 3 images. You can click on this gray dot to expand, but since I'm using CFG1, it mostly ignores the negative prompts, so I'm not adding anything here, which is why I keep it collapsed. Then we have the prompt, and for this workflow and Lora, it's focused on camera controls and multiple angles, just like the workflow title. I included a few quick examples here, but you can try prompting in different ways. It doesn't always work perfectly, but it gives you more control compared to using no Lora at all. On top, we have our Nunchaku model connected to the Lora loader, where we load our Lora. This Lora is made for the Qwen Edit 2509 model. so it will work whether you use the regular model or the Nunchaku model. But you'll need to change the loaders, a diffusion loader for the regular Qwen edit model and a Lora loader for the Lora, since the ones I present here are made for the Nunchaku version. A member from Discord suggested using this node to make it work better with the Qwen edit model, and the rest is similar to a regular Qwen edit workflow. Let's run this workflow to see the result. I included an image comparer node here so you can see the before and after. The camera angle changed and stayed pretty consistent. The Qwen model might still struggle with small details like textures or material patterns. They might not look perfectly identical, but it's pretty close. Let's change the prompt now to move the camera to the right instead of the left. Now we can see the same chair from a different angle. This is quite useful for those working with 3D, or anyone who needs different angles for the first and last frames to control video transitions better, like in this example. It takes around 12 seconds to generate an image while recording, so I'd say that's quite good for speed. The more VRAM you have, the faster it will be. Let's do another quick test, this time with a car. And as you can see, the result looks pretty believable. You can try different seeds until you get one you like. Now let's move to the second workflow, which is used to relight a subject. All you have to do is download this Lora, place it in the Loras folder, and refresh ComfyUI. You can see it looks a little different here. Instead of a text encoder, I have a node that lets me input the trigger words and the prompt separately to make it easier to work with. The text encoder is still here, but collapsed, and if we look closely, we can see our new node connected here. For this node, I'm using these Chinese trigger words that mean relight. Then I describe how the new light and shadows should look. If you want to see what this node really is, you can right-click and choose Fix Node, and you'll see it's just a simple concatenate node. I can disconnect it to show how it looks before connecting it, just like in our previous node. If you want to build one yourself, search for the concatenate node, then drag a connection from the string output. You'll see a small dot in the top left corner of the text input field, and if you release, it connects there. Now you can combine two strings, put the trigger word in the first field and the actual prompt in the second field. You can also add a delimiter like a comma or a space between them. Nothing complicated, but it's useful. I'll undo using Ctrl+Z a few times to return to the original workflow, and let's test it. I have this jar with Pixajam, and for the prompt, I'll use something like morning light with soft scattered patterns, plus the Chinese trigger word for relight. Now when I run it, I get the same jar, but with different lighting. Sometimes it adds more contrast, but that's generally a Qwen model issue, which can be fixed later in post-processing. Let's open a different image, and if I run it with the same prompt, I get something like this. You can see how the light and shadows changed. Let's change the prompt to add a subtle purple light on the left, and look at that, we now have light exactly where we wanted. Here's another example with a different prompt for purple and blue lighting, so experiment with different prompts. Let's try it on a photo of a woman too, maybe add some dramatic light to create a dark mood. And here's the result. You can see how the light changed, but the face stayed consistent. Let's also try a prompt for golden hour light. And this is the result. It's really fun to play with. Now let's move to the next one, which is one of my favorites. This one is called white to scene. Basically, you can have products or subjects on a white background, and the AI will replace that background with an actual scene. For the Lora, get it from here and rename it as I suggested. Then we need an image on a white background, like this car I'm using. We have the Chinese trigger words again, which mean turn a white background into a real scene or something similar. Then we have the prompt that describes the scene. Let's run the workflow and look at what we got now, our car with shadows and lights in the new environment. It even made the windows transparent so you can see the surroundings. There are cases when the environment might not match the angle of the car perfectly. In that case, it will add the car, but it might not keep the same angle. It depends on the prompts and how the model was trained. Sometimes it stays identical, and other times there's a slight angle change. Here's another example with the jar on a white background. I'll add something simple for the prompt, like in the rain, and the result looks pretty good, with that jar placed realistically in the rain. Let's change the prompt to snow, and now we have snow, even some on top of the jar, so it looks quite believable and well blended into the scene. I can also try in the desert, and it looks nice too, but it depends on the context. If I say in the hands of a woman, it will add that, but the jar might appear farther away to include the woman in the image. I added macro photo to make it show the jar a bit closer. It's quite good for creating beautiful product presentations, especially if the details are clear and large enough. You can even place it on the moon if you want. Moving to the fourth workflow, this one is called Fusion. Make sure you download the Lora for it, rename it to Fusion, and place it in the Loras folder. This workflow is great when you want to combine two images and make them blend better, similar to the new Photoshop function called Harmonize. Let me show you how I use it. I'll demonstrate in Photoshop, but you can use any image editing tool. Let's say I have this scene, and I want to place a car in it. I can remove the background, resize it, and move it where I want in the scene, but the problem is the lighting is different and the shadows aren't consistent, so it doesn't blend naturally. To fix that, I can merge this image and then load it into ComfyUI. This workflow works mostly with trigger words. The Chinese text means something like blend the images together, correct the product perspective and lighting, and integrate the product naturally into the background. With those trigger words, I run the workflow and I get this result where the car now fits nicely into the scene. It adds shadows, lighting, and even transparent windows, so it looks like it belongs there. The image shifts a bit, but that seems to be something the Qwen model does sometimes. Let's try another example. Maybe I want to place a jar inside the car. Doing this manually in Photoshop usually takes a lot of time, and you have to know how perspective, shadows, and lighting work. But with this Lora, I can just input that, and now the jar blends naturally into the scene inside the car. For those who do photo manipulation, this is quite useful, even for studying how shadows and lighting are adjusted. Let's move to the fifth workflow. This one is called Light Restoration. Download the Lora from here, place it in the Loras folder, refresh ComfyUI, and if you renamed it differently than I did, make sure to select it in this node. I have this photo of a woman with shadows on her face. This Lora helps remove those shadows. The trigger words are here, and they mean something like remove the existing lighting and shadows and relight the image using soft light. You can use only the trigger words without any extra prompt, and it will still work. When we test it, we get something like this. You can see how it removed the shadows and adjusted the lighting. This can be useful for creating datasets for Lora training with before and after images. Let's add another test image, like this woman underwater. If we run it, you can see it removed all the lighting from the woman, so in some cases, that can be useful too. Let's move to the next workflow, which is used for removing things from an image. Again, download the Lora and place it in the Loras folder. I have this pixel jar here, and the trigger word is remove. Then I just write what I want to remove, like the pixel label, for example. If I run the workflow, you can see it removed that label. According to the Lora author, what makes this one different is that it reduces the color shift and movement you usually get with the Qwen model, so it's more consistent. The Lora works quite well. If something doesn't work, try a different seed or adjust the prompt. Let's remove the top paper and string and add a spoon inside the jar, and the result looks pretty good and realistic. You can try it with all kinds of subjects. If I load this photo of a woman, I can remove her hair if I want, and now she's bald. Or I can remove her black t-shirt and add a white bra, and it still keeps the image consistent. Moving to the next workflow, this one is used to add a design on a t-shirt. Download the Lora and make sure to check more about it because the creator has a YouTube channel where they teach how to train Loras locally. Download the Lora to the Loras folder and refresh ComfyUI. For this workflow, we need two images, one that contains a t-shirt, like this woman, and one that has a design or logo. The trigger words are put this design on their shirt. When we run it, we get the design placed on the t-shirt. It's much faster than doing it in Photoshop or creating a mock-up. Let's load another image with a t-shirt like this one. And the result looks like this. Sometimes the design can appear too faded. I'm not sure if that's because the Lora wasn't trained enough or if it's a Qwen model issue, but try a few seeds. As you can see, for this seed, it looks fine now. Let's try with a man wearing a white t-shirt, and for the design, I'll use the jar. The result looks good, placed nicely on the t-shirt. Moving to the next workflow, this one is called Uncrop. At least, that's how the Lora creator named it, though I'd probably name it differently. This one is available on the Civit AI website, so make sure you log in first to download it. If you click here, you'll see the info about the Lora, and you can download it using the blue button once you're logged in. There are two ways to use this one. The first way is with an image and a white mask. Then, in the second image, you load what you want to be placed in that white area. It can be used for head or face swaps. Load an image, like this warrior woman, then follow the instructions I included. Right-click on the image, choose Open in Mask Editor, go to the left side, and select the brush. Then go to the color selector on the right and pick white. Adjust the brush thickness, and paint the area you want to replace, whether it's just the face or the entire head. Once you're done, click the Save button, and now you have that image with the white mask. Instead of that, you can also use an image edited in Photoshop where you've already added a white area, and then upload it. For the second image, I have this woman with purple hair. The trigger words for this Lora are remove the white parts, use the image for context. When we run it, we get the head of the second image placed over the warrior image, kind of like inpainting with an image. It doesn't always work perfectly, depending on the images, but like with any AI, you can try a different seed or other images. Let's replace the head with this cartoon head to see if it works, and we get something that looks good, so as long as the image isn't too complex, it manages to do it right. Now let me show you the second way, which is for outpainting. Let's say I want this image to be taller. I'll use the crop tool to add extra space at the bottom and add a white background behind it. All you need is an image with a white area, and the AI will fill that area with something that fits. Flatten the image, then load it. Select these two nodes and bypass them since I don't want an extra image in that area. I just want it filled with something that fits. Looking at the result, you can see it outpainted the image nicely and added the missing parts at the bottom. You can use this to fix hands or other missing elements. For example, if I don't like this jar here, I can make a selection and fill it with white. You can also do this directly in ComfyUI using the mask editor, but I'm showing different options. Now load that image and run the workflow. Look at the result. It added a laptop there that it thought would fit. I can generate again, and it added a coffee instead. It's quite useful. You can also tell it what should be in that area, like a black coffee mug on the table, and the result matches the description. It adds the mug in a way that fits naturally. The image is similar but not perfect compared to the original. If you still want to keep the original, there are ways to do that. For example, copy that generation and paste it over the original. Make sure it's the same size so it aligns correctly. Then add a mask, fill it with black, and use a soft white brush to paint and reveal the part you want from the generation, like just that corner. Now you have the original image plus the updated corner from the new generation. Give it a try and see how it works for you. If you want to combine multiple Loras, you can duplicate the Lora loader node and connect it so the flow passes through that node as well. If you add multiple Loras, you might want to reduce the Lora strength a bit for each one. You should also have this Lora stack node, which allows you to add multiple Loras. You can choose the Lora count from here, then select the Lora and set the weight for each one. Place this node between the Qwen model and the differential diffusion node. Playing with all these Loras was fun, so I decided to train one myself to see how it works. For this workflow, download the Turn to Photo Lora and place it in the Loras folder. I built it to transform illustrations into photos, so it works with sketches, simple 3D renders, or logos. For example, I have my logo symbol here. For the trigger words, I used turn this into a real photo. When I run it, I get something like this. For this seed, this is how the AI interprets my logo as a photo. Let's try something else. This time, I added some objects in Blender, took a screenshot, and uploaded that image here. The result looks like a realistic 3D render of that scene. You can also guide it more with a prompt, like a red sphere, a blue cube, and some snow. Now we get a final render that's way faster than creating it in a 3D program, adding materials, lights, and everything manually. Let's try with something else. Here I have a 3D model I made from my SVG cut files, like a layered ornament. I took a screenshot from Blender, removed those extra prompt words, and got this result with nice lighting that looks more like a final render. We can control how it looks. For example, I can prompt a plywood Christmas ornament in the snow, and it looks great and consistent. It also works with sketches, from simple to detailed. For this bunny sketch, I got this result, which looks quite nice. For this pencil drawing, I got this, and it's great for bringing your kids' sketches to life. You can always add more details in the prompt about how it should look. It won't work if the image is already very realistic, like a photo or detailed 3D render. For example, this woman's image didn't change much. For some 3D art, it still works, depending on the image. With this cartoon head, it managed to make it look more realistic. It also works with vector or flat style illustrations. For instance, this man came from a simple illustration, and it turned out pretty well. It's fun to experiment, even if it's not perfect. I only trained it with 40 image pairs, since training can get expensive. Here's how I did it. I'm not an expert in training, but I asked ChatGPT how to do it and what settings to use, so I'll show what I did in case it helps you. I used 40 pairs, one start image, the illustration, and one end image, the real photo. I used some free photos from Pexels and some that I took myself, then used Qwen and Nano Banana to convert those photos into sketches, illustrations, or 3D-like renders. I did that until I had 40 before and 40 after images, organized in pairs. What's important is that the images must have the same name and end with start or end, just like I show in these examples. I use the FAL website since training locally requires a lot of VRAM and time. The trainer I used is called Qwen Edit Plus Trainer. For the input images, you can see on the info panel how the file names should be organized. I had a few failed attempts because I didn't rename the files correctly. I used the naming style for the Qwen Edit model, not the Qwen Edit Plus one. It told me the file names weren't right, so make sure the names match exactly like in my examples. Here's how I trained. Click on Add Images, select the first image, scroll down, hold Shift, and click the last image to select all of them. If you scroll down, you'll see all are paired. I had 80 images total, 40 pairs. ChatGPT recommended 2,000 steps for my number of images. I'm not sure if that's the perfect number, so do your own research on that. Since I didn't use a text file next to each pair with a prompt, I used global trigger words that applied to all images. The trigger words were, turn this into a real photo. Before training the Lora, test those trigger words with the Qwen Edit model without a Lora to understand what kind of result they produce. For the reference image, I used only one. If you use two or more, you'll need to name them differently and select the number here. I left it at 1. For the learning rate, I kept the default value. The training cost was about $8 for 40 image pairs. When you're ready, click Start, and after about an hour and a few minutes, I got a message saying completed. Click Show Files, and where it says Diffuser's Lora file, that's the Safe Tensors Lora file you need to download. Rename it how you want, place it in the Loras folder, then load it in the node and use the trigger words you trained it with. Hopefully, if your training images were good, you'll get a working Lora. I have some other images I want to use to train a Lora, but I'm not sure if 10 pairs are enough. I found that this naming method is much easier. Just put number 1 and end, and number 1 and start, then for 2, and so on. I have these icons showing how I want them to look after generation, and in Photoshop I sketched over them to create the before version. Then, on FAL, I added the images, so in total there are 20 images, 10 pairs. ChatGPT recommended 3,000 steps for 10 pairs, but I'm not sure if that's correct. I used these trigger words, the reference image count is 1, and it also recommended this learning rate. I think with these settings it will cost me, so I started the training, but I don't think it will finish before I need to publish the tutorial. It's at 30% and has already been running for more than 36 minutes, so training steps and learning rate clearly influence both the time and cost. There's a tool called Ostrus AI Toolkit that lets you train locally, but I think you need more VRAM to train for the Qwen Edit Plus model. Anyway, if this Lora works, I will include the workflow on Discord with the link inside the workflow to download it. That's all for today. I'm moving my tutorials to Wednesday from now on, and I'll alternate each week between a full episode and a short one. I've been working 12 hours a day and haven't had much time for life, so this new schedule should help me avoid burnout while keeping the tutorials going. Thank you, Legends, for your support, and to everyone who subscribed to the membership. Have a great day, and I'll see you on Discord.